Welcome to Sinister Memory. If you're new here, subscribe now and let us know in the comments where you're listening to this story. Let's get to today's story. The interstate stretched endlessly through the Arizona desert, a ribbon of asphalt that connected civilization to the vast emptiness beyond. On March 15, 1983, Highway Patrol Officer Daniel Rodriguez made a routine stop that would forever alter his understanding of human nature. The refrigerated truck had been parked at a rest stop near Flagstaff for 3 days, its engine silent, its driver nowhere to be found. What began as a standard abandoned vehicle investigation quickly transformed into something far more sinister when Rodriguez noticed the peculiar odor emanating from the trailer's rear doors. The smell was not the typical decay one might expect from spoiled cargo, but something else entirely. Something that made his experienced instincts recoil with an inexplicable dread. The truck belonged to Interstate Coal Transport, a legitimate freight company based in Phoenix. According to the manifest found in the cab, the vehicle was scheduled to deliver frozen meat products to various distributors across Texas. The paperwork appeared authentic, bearing the proper seals and signatures. Yet something about the documentation struck Rodriguez as oddly pristine, as if it had been prepared with unusual care and attention to detail. The driver's logbook told a different story. The entries, written in a meticulous hand, detailed a journey that began in Tucson on March 10th. The handwriting was remarkably steady, each letter formed with deliberate precision. The logs recorded standard information: mileage, fuel stops, rest periods, but interspersed throughout were cryptic notations that seemed to follow no recognizable pattern. Numbers appeared in margins, coordinates, perhaps, or some personal code known only to the author. When the trailer doors were finally opened, the discovery defied immediate comprehension. The refrigeration unit had maintained its temperature perfectly, preserving the contents in a state of suspended animation. Arranged with disturbing orderliness were packages wrapped in industrial plastic, each labeled with dates spanning the previous 2 weeks. The labels bore no names, only numbers, and what appeared to be anatomical references, written in the same careful script found in the logbook. The investigation that followed would consume the resources of multiple law enforcement agencies across 3 states. Federal authorities arrived within hours, their presence indicating the gravity of what had been uncovered. The truck's registration led to a paper trail that seemed to dissolve upon closer examination. Interstate Coal Transport existed, but their records showed no knowledge of the vehicle or its supposed driver. The man who had operated the truck remained a phantom. Security footage from truck stops along the route showed a figure of average height and build. Always wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his features, he moved with purpose but never urgency, conducting his business with the mundane efficiency of any long-haul driver. Witnesses described him as unremarkable, polite when necessary, forgettable in every way that mattered. The cargo manifest listed the truck's origin as a meat processing facility outside Tucson, but when investigators arrived at the address, they found only an abandoned warehouse that had been vacant for months. The building's interior bore signs of recent use: industrial freezers that had been recently cleaned, work tables that showed evidence of careful sanitization, and a loading dock positioned to accommodate large vehicles. Most disturbing were the personal effects found scattered throughout the trailer. Wallets, jewelry, and identification documents created a timeline of disappearances that stretched across multiple states. The victims appeared to have been chosen at random: travelers, hitchhikers, individuals whose absence might not be immediately noticed. Each item was catalogued with the same meticulous care evident in the driver's logbook, suggesting a mind that found comfort in order and documentation. The refrigeration unit's temperature logs revealed a pattern of activity that painted a chilling picture of methodical planning. The system had been activated and deactivated at precise intervals, maintaining optimal conditions for preservation while conserving fuel during transport. This level of technical knowledge suggested someone familiar with commercial refrigeration systems, possibly with experience in the food service or transportation industry. As news of the discovery spread through law enforcement channels, reports began filtering in from across the Southwest. Missing persons cases that had gone cold suddenly took on new significance. The phantom driver's route appeared to follow major interstate highways, connecting urban centers where transient populations made ideal hunting grounds for someone seeking victims who would not be quickly missed. The investigation's scope expanded as authorities realized they were dealing with something unprecedented in scale and organization. The careful documentation, the methodical preservation, and the systematic nature of the crimes suggested a perpetrator operating with clinical detachment. This was not the work of someone driven by passion or rage, but rather the calculated actions of an individual who approached violence with the same efficiency one might apply to any other profession. The empty truck cab offered few clues about its operator's identity, but it revealed much about his character through what was absent rather than what remained. The forensic analysis of the truck's contents revealed a methodical precision that chilled even seasoned investigators. Each package had been prepared with surgical care, wrapped in multiple layers of industrial-grade plastic and sealed with professional quality equipment. The preservation techniques demonstrated knowledge that extended far beyond basic refrigeration, suggesting someone with formal training in meat processing or mortuary science. Detective Lieutenant Patricia Vance of the Arizona State Police found herself leading an investigation that defied conventional criminal profiling. The evidence pointed to a perpetrator who operated with the efficiency of a commercial enterprise, treating human remains with the same clinical detachment typically reserved for livestock processing. The temperature logs from the refrigeration unit showed consistent maintenance at precisely 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the optimal temperature for long-term preservation without freezing damage to tissue. The truck's route, reconstructed through fuel receipts and toll booth records, painted a picture of calculated movement across the southwestern United States. The phantom driver had followed major interstate highways, making stops at truck stops and rest areas where transient populations gathered. These locations provided both anonymity and opportunity, places where strangers passed through without leaving lasting impressions on local communities. Security footage from various locations along the route showed the same unremarkable figure conducting routine business. The man purchased fuel, food, and supplies with cash, never lingering long enough to engage in meaningful conversation with staff or other customers. His movements were economical, purposeful, and utterly forgettable. The baseball cap he wore consistently obscured his features from overhead cameras, while his posture and gait revealed nothing distinctive about his physical characteristics. The abandoned warehouse in Tucson yielded additional evidence of the operation's scope and sophistication. Forensic teams discovered traces of industrial cleaning agents that had been applied with thoroughness bordering on obsession. The concrete floors showed faint stains that chemical analysis revealed to be human blood, despite extensive efforts at removal. The building's electrical system had been modified to support high-powered refrigeration equipment, work that required considerable technical expertise. Most disturbing was the discovery of a makeshift office within the warehouse, containing detailed records that spanned several months. The documentation included maps marked with specific locations, timetables for optimal travel routes, and what appeared to be surveillance notes on potential victims. The handwriting matched that found in the truck's logbook, confirming that the same individual had orchestrated every aspect of the operation. The personal effects found in the trailer began to tell individual stories of tragedy. Among them was a wedding ring engraved with a date from 1978, a student identification card from a community college in New Mexico, and a military dog tag belonging to a Vietnam veteran. Each item represented a life interrupted, a person who had simply vanished from their normal routine without explanation or trace. Missing persons reports from across the region began to align with the timeline established by the evidence. The victims appeared to have been selected based on their vulnerability, rather than any personal connection to the perpetrator. Hitchhikers, runaway teenagers, drifters, and individuals experiencing homelessness comprised the majority of those identified. These were people whose disappearances might not be immediately reported or thoroughly investigated. The methodical nature of the crimes suggested a perpetrator who had refined his techniques over time. The packaging materials were purchased from different suppliers across multiple states, preventing any single vendor from recognizing unusual purchasing patterns. The refrigeration equipment had been acquired through legitimate commercial channels, with documentation that appeared authentic but led to dead ends when investigated. Federal Bureau of Investigation profilers studying the case noted the absence of typical serial killer behaviors. There were no signs of sexual violence, no evidence of torture or prolonged suffering, and no apparent attempt to communicate with law enforcement or the media. The crimes appeared motivated by something other than the psychological gratification typically associated with serial murder. The truck itself had been stolen from a legitimate transportation company 6 months earlier, but the theft had been reported as a simple case of vehicle fraud. The perpetrator had assumed the identity of a licensed commercial driver, using forged documentation that was sophisticated enough to pass routine inspections. This level of preparation indicated long-term planning and access to professional quality forgery services. As investigators delved deeper into the case, they began to uncover evidence of a network that extended beyond a single individual. The complexity of the operation, the quality of the forged documents, and the technical expertise required for the preservation process suggested collaboration with others who possessed specialized skills. The investigation's scope continued to expand as authorities realized they were confronting something unprecedented in the annals of American criminal history. The investigation took an unexpected turn when forensic accountants discovered a complex web of financial transactions that suggested the operation extended far beyond a single perpetrator. Bank records revealed a series of cash deposits made to accounts across multiple states, each transaction carefully structured to avoid federal reporting requirements. The money trail led investigators into the shadowy world of underground commerce, where human remains were treated as commodities in a market that operated beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement. Special Agent Robert Chen of the Federal Bureau of Investigation found himself coordinating with agencies he had never known existed. The Department of Agriculture's Criminal Investigation Division became involved when evidence suggested violations of interstate commerce regulations regarding the transportation of biological materials. The complexity of jurisdictional issues reflected the unprecedented nature of the crimes, as existing legal frameworks struggled to address the systematic commercialization of human remains. The forged documentation found in the truck's cab led investigators to a sophisticated counterfeiting operation based in El Paso, Texas. The quality of the fraudulent commercial driver's licenses, vehicle registrations, and shipping manifests indicated access to professional printing equipment and insider knowledge of legitimate documentation procedures. When authorities raided the suspected facility, they discovered an empty warehouse that had been hastily abandoned, leaving behind only the faint odor of industrial chemicals and scattered fragments of partially destroyed paperwork. Surveillance footage from banks where the mysterious deposits had been made revealed a pattern of individuals who appeared unrelated but shared certain behavioral characteristics. Each person conducted their transactions with mechanical precision, avoiding eye contact with security cameras and completing their business with minimal interaction with bank personnel. The timing of these deposits corresponded with the phantom trucker's known movements, suggesting a coordinated network of accomplices operating across state lines. The medical examiner's preliminary findings painted a disturbing picture of the preservation techniques employed. The remains showed evidence of professional-grade embalming procedures, indicating access to mortuary equipment and expertise. Chemical analysis revealed the use of specialized preservatives typically available only to licensed funeral directors or medical research facilities. This level of technical sophistication suggested involvement by individuals with formal training in mortuary science or pathology. Interstate Cold Transport, the legitimate company whose identity had been stolen, cooperated fully with the investigation but provided little useful information. Their records showed no knowledge of the phantom driver or the stolen vehicle, and their security protocols appeared adequate for a standard freight operation. The ease with which their corporate identity had been appropriated highlighted vulnerabilities in the commercial transportation system that had previously gone unrecognized. The abandoned warehouse in Tucson yielded additional evidence when investigators employed ground-penetrating radar to examine the surrounding area. Anomalous readings suggested the presence of buried materials that warranted excavation. The subsequent archaeological dig, conducted under the supervision of forensic anthropologists, revealed a carefully constructed drainage system that had been used to dispose of biological waste. The engineering required for such a system indicated planning that extended back months or possibly years. Communication intercepts from the investigation period revealed coded conversations between individuals using commercial radio frequencies typically reserved for legitimate trucking operations. The messages appeared to reference delivery schedules, route modifications, and pickup locations using terminology that mimicked standard freight logistics. Cryptographic analysis suggested a sophisticated communication protocol that allowed coordination of activities across vast distances while maintaining operational security. The psychological profile developed by federal behavioral analysts described a network of individuals operating with corporate-level organization and efficiency. The absence of typical criminal motivations, such as revenge, sexual gratification, or financial desperation, suggested something more disturbing: the systematic reduction of human beings to mere commercial products. The clinical detachment evident in every aspect of the operation indicated perpetrators who had successfully compartmentalized their activities, treating murder and dismemberment as routine business procedures. Evidence recovered from the truck's hidden compartments included detailed anatomical charts and medical reference materials that suggested the operation served specific clientele with particular requirements. The documentation indicated different preservation methods for different types of tissue, implying customers with varying needs and applications. This level of specialization pointed to a market that extended beyond simple trophy collection into realms that investigators were reluctant to fully contemplate. The investigation's expansion revealed connections to missing persons cases dating back several years across multiple states. The pattern suggested a gradual escalation in both scope and sophistication, as if the network had been refining its methods through experience. Early cases showed signs of amateur execution, while more recent disappearances demonstrated the professional competence evident in the Arizona discovery. As federal resources were marshaled to address the growing scope of the investigation, authorities began to realize they were confronting something that challenged fundamental assumptions about criminal behavior and organization. The breakthrough came when cryptographers working for the National Security Agency successfully decoded portions of the communication intercepts. The messages revealed references to specific anatomical requirements, delivery schedules, and payment arrangements that painted a horrifying picture of organized commerce in human remains. The coded language employed medical terminology with business jargon, creating a lexicon that reduced human anatomy to catalog numbers and shipping classifications. Dr. Margaret Sinclair, a forensic pathologist with the Centers for Disease Control, was called in to analyze the preservation techniques and their potential applications. Her examination revealed that different body parts had been processed using methods appropriate for specific end uses. Some remains showed evidence of preparation for long-term storage, while others appeared to have been processed for immediate consumption. The implications of this discovery sent shockwaves through the investigative team as they began to comprehend the true scope of the network's activities. The financial investigation uncovered a sophisticated money laundering operation that utilized legitimate businesses as fronts for the illegal trade. Restaurant supply companies, medical research facilities, and specialty food distributors appeared to be unwitting participants in a scheme that exploited their normal procurement processes. Purchase orders for exotic meats and research specimens provided cover for transactions that involved human remains, with the true nature of the products disguised through careful documentation and mislabeling. Surveillance of the identified bank accounts revealed a pattern of international wire transfers that suggested the network's reach extended beyond American borders. Payments originated from accounts in countries with less stringent banking regulations, indicating a global clientele for the products being distributed. The amounts involved were substantial enough to suggest that the operation generated significant revenue, transforming what might have been isolated criminal acts into a profitable enterprise. The investigation team discovered that the Phantom Trucker was merely one component of a larger distribution system. Evidence suggested the existence of multiple vehicles operating similar routes across different regions of the country. Coordination between these mobile units appeared to be managed through the coded radio communications, with central dispatchers directing movements based on supply availability and customer demand. The level of organization rivaled that of legitimate freight companies, complete with backup protocols and contingency planning. Analysis of the anatomical charts found in the truck revealed detailed specifications that corresponded to orders placed through the network. The documentation included precise measurements, quality requirements, and special handling instructions that suggested customers with very specific needs. Some orders appeared to be for research purposes, while others indicated applications that investigators were reluctant to fully investigate. The clinical nature of the specifications suggested buyers who approached human remains with the same detachment as any other commercial product. The abandoned warehouse in Tucson proved to be one of several processing facilities operated by the network. Investigators identified similar locations in Nevada, New Mexico, and Colorado, each strategically positioned near major interstate highways for efficient distribution. The facilities shared common characteristics: industrial refrigeration equipment, professional-grade processing tools, and sophisticated waste disposal systems. The investment required to establish and maintain these operations indicated substantial financial backing and long-term planning. Forensic accounting revealed that the network had been operating for at least 3 years before the Arizona discovery. Revenue streams showed steady growth over time, suggesting an expanding customer base and increasing demand for the products being offered. The financial records indicated seasonal variations in activity, with peak periods corresponding to certain times of year when demand apparently increased. This cyclical pattern suggested customers whose needs were tied to specific events or schedules. The psychological profile of the network's leadership painted a picture of individuals who had successfully divorced themselves from the moral implications of their activities. The clinical efficiency evident in every aspect of the operation suggested perpetrators who viewed their work as a legitimate business enterprise. This compartmentalization allowed them to function normally in society, while simultaneously orchestrating activities that violated fundamental human values. Communication analysis revealed that the network employed sophisticated operational security measures typically associated with intelligence agencies or organized crime syndicates. Dead drops, coded communications, and compartmentalized information sharing prevented any single participant from possessing complete knowledge of the operation's scope. This structure provided protection against law enforcement infiltration while ensuring continuity of operations, even if individual components were compromised. The investigation's expansion revealed connections to missing persons cases across multiple countries, suggesting that the network's activities extended far beyond American borders. International law enforcement agencies began sharing information about similar disappearances and discoveries, painting a picture of a global enterprise that exploited jurisdictional limitations to avoid detection. The sophistication of the operation challenged conventional approaches to criminal investigation, requiring unprecedented cooperation between agencies that had never previously worked together. Evidence suggested that the network had evolved from smaller, independent operations that had gradually consolidated under centralized management. This evolution reflected a business-like approach to expansion and efficiency, with successful techniques being standardized and replicated across multiple locations. The transformation from isolated criminal acts to organized commerce represented a disturbing development in the landscape of human trafficking and exploitation. As investigators delved deeper into the network's structure, they began to uncover evidence of corruption within legitimate institutions that had facilitated the operation's success. The investigation reached a critical juncture when evidence emerged of systematic corruption within multiple government agencies and private institutions. Document analysis revealed that legitimate medical research permits had been fraudulently obtained to provide legal cover for the transportation and processing of human remains. The sophistication of these forgeries suggested access to official templates and insider knowledge of regulatory procedures that could only have come from within the institutions themselves. Inspector General offices across several federal departments launched parallel investigations as the scope of institutional compromise became apparent. The Food and Drug Administration discovered that research facility licenses had been issued based on falsified applications, while the Department of Transportation found evidence of commercial driver certifications granted without proper background checks. The pattern of regulatory failures suggested either widespread incompetence or deliberate facilitation of the network's activities. The corruption investigation uncovered a web of financial relationships between network operatives and officials within regulatory agencies. Bank records revealed regular payments to individuals in positions to influence permit approvals, inspection schedules, and enforcement actions. These payments were structured as consulting fees or research grants, providing plausible cover for what amounted to systematic bribery. The amounts involved were substantial enough to compromise decision-making at multiple levels of government oversight. Dr. James Harrison, a forensic accountant specializing in institutional fraud, discovered that the network had exploited legitimate research programs to obtain human tissue for illegal purposes. University medical schools, pharmaceutical companies, and government research facilities had unknowingly provided cover for the operation through their normal procurement processes. Purchase orders for cadaveric specimens and research materials had been manipulated to include unauthorized acquisitions that were then diverted to the network's commercial activities. The investigation revealed that several mortuary science programs at accredited institutions had been infiltrated by network operatives who used their positions to recruit personnel and acquire technical expertise. Student records showed individuals who had completed formal training in embalming and preservation techniques before disappearing from legitimate employment. These trained professionals provided the network with the specialized skills necessary to maintain product quality and meet customer specifications. Evidence emerged of a sophisticated recruitment process that targeted individuals with specific qualifications and psychological profiles. The network appeared to seek employees with technical expertise but limited social connections, making them ideal candidates for clandestine operations. Background checks revealed that many suspected operatives had histories of financial difficulties or personal problems that made them vulnerable to recruitment through financial incentives or coercion. The institutional compromise extended to law enforcement agencies, where evidence suggested that certain investigations had been deliberately misdirected or prematurely closed. Case files showed patterns of evidence that should have triggered federal involvement, but were instead handled as routine local matters. The failure to recognize these patterns earlier suggested either systematic incompetence or active interference by individuals with access to investigative information. Analysis of the network's operational security revealed sophisticated counter-surveillance techniques that indicated training by professionals with intelligence or military backgrounds. The operatives demonstrated knowledge of law enforcement procedures and investigative methods that allowed them to avoid detection for extended periods. This expertise suggested recruitment from within security agencies or collaboration with individuals who possessed classified knowledge of surveillance techniques. The financial investigation uncovered evidence that the network had established relationships with legitimate businesses that unknowingly facilitated money laundering operations. Restaurant chains, medical supply companies, and research institutions had been used as conduits for payments that appeared to be normal commercial transactions. The complexity of these arrangements required detailed knowledge of corporate accounting practices and regulatory requirements. International cooperation revealed that similar networks operated in other countries, suggesting a global organization with standardized procedures and shared resources. Evidence indicated regular communication between American operatives and counterparts in Europe and Asia, coordinating activities and sharing technical innovations. The international scope of the operation challenged traditional approaches to criminal investigation and required unprecedented cooperation between law enforcement agencies. The psychological analysis of network operatives revealed individuals who had successfully compartmentalized their activities to function normally in society while participating in systematic atrocities. Many maintained legitimate employment, family relationships, and community involvement that provided perfect cover for their clandestine activities. This ability to maintain dual identities suggested either exceptional psychological resilience or profound moral disconnection. The investigation team discovered that the network had developed contingency plans for various scenarios, including law enforcement discovery and operational disruption. Safe houses, alternate communication channels, and emergency protocols demonstrated long-term strategic thinking that anticipated potential threats to the organization. The sophistication of these preparations suggested leadership with extensive experience in clandestine operations. Evidence suggested that the network had been gradually expanding its activities over several years, testing law enforcement responses and refining operational procedures based on the results. Early operations appeared deliberately limited in scope, designed to identify vulnerabilities in investigative procedures and regulatory oversight. This methodical approach to expansion demonstrated strategic thinking that prioritized long-term sustainability over immediate profits. As the investigation continued to expand, authorities began to realize that they were confronting an organization that had successfully adapted corporate management principles to criminal enterprise, creating a hybrid entity that challenged conventional understanding of both business and crime. The most disturbing breakthrough in the investigation came when federal agents successfully penetrated the network's encrypted customer database. Hidden within seemingly innocuous business software was a comprehensive catalog that detailed client preferences, order histories, and delivery schedules spanning 3 years of operations. The database revealed a clientele that extended far beyond the investigators' most pessimistic assumptions, encompassing individuals and organizations from multiple countries and diverse backgrounds. Computer forensics specialist Dr. Angela Foster worked around the clock to decode the database's sophisticated encryption protocols. The system employed military-grade security measures that suggested either professional cybersecurity expertise within the network or collaboration with individuals possessing classified technical knowledge. The encryption keys were embedded within legitimate business applications, making detection nearly impossible without specific knowledge of their location and structure. The customer profiles revealed purchasing patterns that defied conventional understanding of criminal motivation. Some clients appeared to be collectors who specialized in specific anatomical specimens, while others demonstrated preferences that suggested ritualistic or ceremonial applications. The clinical nature of the order specifications indicated buyers who approached human remains with the detached professionalism typically associated with legitimate scientific research or commercial procurement. Analysis of the payment records revealed that many customers were repeat buyers who had developed ongoing relationships with the network over extended periods. The transaction histories showed increasing order sizes and complexity over time, suggesting that initial purchases had led to expanded involvement with the organization. This pattern indicated a customer base that had been carefully cultivated and gradually introduced to more extensive participation in the network's activities. The geographic distribution of customers spanned multiple continents, with concentrations in major metropolitan areas where anonymity was easier to maintain. Urban centers provided both the population density necessary for discrete operations and the sophisticated infrastructure required for international commerce. The global reach of the customer base suggested marketing and recruitment efforts that extended far beyond traditional criminal networks. Investigation of individual customer profiles revealed disturbing patterns of legitimate professional achievement combined with participation in the network's activities. Medical researchers, university professors, restaurant owners, and art collectors appeared alongside individuals with no apparent connection to activities that might explain their involvement. The diversity of the customer base suggested that the network had successfully penetrated multiple sectors of society. The database contained detailed records of customer preferences that revealed the systematic nature of the network's operations. Specifications included not only anatomical requirements, but also preservation methods, packaging preferences, and delivery schedules that accommodated individual client needs. This level of customization indicated a service-oriented approach that prioritized customer satisfaction and repeat business. Financial analysis of the customer transactions revealed payment methods that exploited weaknesses in international banking regulations. Cryptocurrency transfers, offshore accounts, and precious metal exchanges provided anonymity while facilitating large-value transactions across international borders. The sophistication of these financial arrangements suggested professional money laundering expertise within the network's operational structure. The investigation team discovered that some customers had progressed from passive buyers to active participants in the network's operations. Order histories showed individuals who had initially purchased finished products but later began requesting specific victims with particular characteristics. This evolution from customer to collaborator suggested a recruitment process that gradually increased individual involvement and complicity. Communication records between the network and its customers revealed a customer service infrastructure that rivaled legitimate commercial enterprises. Technical support, order tracking, and quality assurance procedures demonstrated organizational sophistication that prioritized customer retention and satisfaction. The professional nature of these interactions suggested that many customers viewed their participation as routine commercial activity rather than criminal conspiracy. The database revealed seasonal variations in customer demand that corresponded to specific cultural or religious observances in various countries. Peak ordering periods aligned with traditional festivals, academic calendar cycles, and other predictable events that increased demand for the network's products. This cyclical pattern allowed the organization to optimize its operations and inventory management based on anticipated customer needs. Evidence suggested that the network had developed different product lines to serve distinct customer segments. Research-grade specimens commanded premium prices and required specialized preservation techniques, while other products were processed for immediate consumption or ceremonial use. This market segmentation demonstrated sophisticated understanding of customer needs and willingness to invest in specialized capabilities. The customer database included detailed feedback mechanisms that allowed buyers to rate product quality and service delivery. These reviews provided insights into customer satisfaction levels and identified areas for operational improvement. The systematic collection and analysis of customer feedback demonstrated a commitment to continuous improvement that characterized successful commercial enterprises. Investigation of the network's marketing strategies revealed sophisticated customer acquisition techniques that exploited legitimate professional networks and social connections. Academic conferences, trade associations, and cultural organizations appeared to serve as recruitment venues where potential customers were identified and gradually introduced to the network's services. This approach allowed the organization to expand its customer base while maintaining operational security. The psychological profiles of identified customers revealed individuals who had successfully rationalized their participation through various justification mechanisms. Some viewed their involvement as contributing to scientific advancement, while others claimed cultural or religious motivations for their purchases. The investigation reached its most perplexing phase when key evidence began disappearing from secure federal facilities. Case files, physical specimens, and digital records vanished without explanation, despite multiple layers of security and restricted access protocols. The systematic nature of these disappearances suggested coordination by individuals with intimate knowledge of federal evidence, storage procedures, and security vulnerabilities. Special Agent Victoria Kane, assigned to investigate the evidence tampering, discovered that the missing materials followed a specific pattern. Items that could directly implicate high-profile customers or reveal the network's operational structure were prioritized for removal, while less sensitive evidence remained untouched. This selective approach indicated sophisticated understanding of the investigation's direction and potential impact on specific individuals or organizations. The security breach investigation revealed that several federal employees with access to the evidence had received substantial financial windfalls during the period when materials began disappearing. Bank records showed cash deposits, property purchases, and debt payments that far exceeded their government salaries. These financial anomalies suggested a coordinated effort to compromise individuals with access to sensitive materials through targeted bribery or coercion. Surveillance footage from federal facilities showed authorized personnel accessing evidence storage areas during unusual hours, often accompanied by individuals whose presence was not properly documented. The security logs had been altered to obscure these visits, requiring sophisticated knowledge of federal record-keeping systems. The ability to manipulate official documentation suggested corruption that extended to multiple levels of the security apparatus. The investigation team discovered that several key witnesses had either disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances. Individuals who had provided crucial testimony about the network's operations were found dead in apparent accidents or suicides that occurred with remarkable timing. The pattern of witness elimination suggested a systematic effort to prevent testimony that could expose the full scope of the organization's activities. Forensic analysis of the remaining evidence revealed attempts at contamination that would have rendered crucial materials inadmissible in court proceedings. Chemical treatments designed to degrade DNA evidence and destroy fingerprints had been applied to selected items, while other materials showed signs of deliberate mislabeling or chain of custody violations. These sabotage efforts demonstrated detailed knowledge of forensic procedures and legal requirements for evidence admissibility. The phantom trucker who had initiated the investigation remained elusive despite extensive manhunts across multiple states. Sightings were reported from locations thousands of miles apart, often occurring simultaneously, in ways that suggested either multiple individuals using the same identity or deliberate disinformation campaigns designed to confuse law enforcement efforts. The ability to maintain such operational security indicated resources and expertise that exceeded typical criminal capabilities. Communication intercepts revealed that the network had activated emergency protocols designed to protect core operations while sacrificing peripheral elements. The organization appeared willing to abandon significant assets and personnel to preserve its essential infrastructure and leadership. This strategic approach to crisis management demonstrated long-term thinking that prioritized organizational survival over individual protection. The international investigation revealed that similar evidence tampering had occurred in other countries where parallel networks operated. Coordinated efforts to compromise investigations suggested a global command structure capable of directing defensive operations across multiple jurisdictions simultaneously. The synchronization of these activities indicated communication capabilities and organizational discipline that rivaled state-level intelligence agencies. Analysis of the network's financial records revealed massive fund transfers to offshore accounts during the period when evidence began disappearing. The timing and amounts of these transactions suggested preparation for extended operations under increased scrutiny or complete dissolution of American activities. The sophistication of the money laundering techniques employed indicated professional financial expertise within the organization's leadership structure. The investigation team discovered that several federal prosecutors assigned to the case had received death threats that demonstrated intimate knowledge of their personal lives and family situations. The threats were delivered through channels that suggested surveillance capabilities and intelligence gathering that exceeded normal criminal resources. The psychological impact of these intimidation efforts effectively compromised the prosecution's ability to pursue aggressive legal strategies. Evidence emerged that the network had established contingency identities and safe houses for key personnel, allowing rapid relocation and identity changes when operations were threatened. The quality of the false documentation and the sophistication of the relocation procedures suggested collaboration with professional identity fabrication services typically associated with intelligence agencies or organized crime syndicates. The investigation revealed that certain government officials had been compromised through elaborate blackmail schemes that exploited personal vulnerabilities and professional misconduct. The network appeared to have invested considerable resources in intelligence-gathering operations designed to identify and exploit weaknesses in key individuals who could influence the investigation's direction or outcome. As the investigation entered its final phase, authorities realized that they were confronting an organization that had successfully adapted and evolved in response to law enforcement pressure. The network's ability to compromise federal investigations while maintaining operational continuity suggested a level of sophistication that challenged fundamental assumptions about criminal capabilities and government security. The systematic destruction of evidence and elimination of witnesses created a situation where the full scope of the network's activities might never be completely understood, leaving investigators to piece together fragments of a larger truth that remained tantalizingly beyond their grasp. 3 years after the discovery on that desolate Arizona highway, the case files remain sealed in federal archives, their contents deemed too sensitive for public disclosure. The official investigation concluded with 17 arrests across 6 states, but those familiar with the evidence understand that the captured individuals represented merely the visible periphery of a vast organization that continues to operate beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement. The Phantom Trucker was never apprehended, despite one of the most extensive manhunts in federal history. His identity remains unknown, his face a composite of contradictory witness descriptions that seem to describe different individuals entirely. Some investigators theorize that the trucker persona was itself a fabrication, a carefully constructed identity designed to deflect attention from the network's true leadership structure. Others believe he simply vanished into the anonymous flow of interstate commerce, indistinguishable from the thousands of legitimate drivers who traverse America's highways daily. The refrigerated truck that started the investigation was eventually destroyed in a federal facility, but not before every component had been exhaustively analyzed. The vehicle's modification history revealed a level of technical sophistication that suggested collaboration with automotive engineers and refrigeration specialists. The precision of these alterations indicated planning that extended back years before the network's activities came to light, suggesting an organization that thought in terms of decades rather than immediate profits. Federal prosecutors achieved convictions on charges ranging from interstate transportation of stolen property to conspiracy to commit murder, but the sentences handed down seemed inadequate given the scope of the crimes. Many defendants received plea bargains in exchange for cooperation that never materialized, as witnesses either recanted their testimony or disappeared before trial proceedings could conclude. The legal system appeared ill-equipped to address crimes that transcended traditional categories of criminal behavior. The customer database, despite its initial promise as evidence, proved largely unusable in court due to chain of custody issues and questions about its authenticity. Defense attorneys successfully argued that the digital evidence could have been fabricated or tampered with, creating reasonable doubt about its reliability. The sophisticated encryption that had initially impressed investigators ultimately worked against prosecution efforts by raising questions about the evidence's integrity. Missing persons cases across the southwestern United States continue to follow patterns that investigators recognize but cannot definitively link to the network's activities. The disappearances maintain the same demographic targeting and geographic distribution that characterized the original crimes, suggesting that operations continue under modified procedures designed to avoid detection. The victims remain predominantly transient individuals whose absence generates minimal investigative attention. International cooperation efforts revealed similar networks operating in other countries, but diplomatic complications and jurisdictional limitations prevented effective coordination of enforcement actions. The global nature of the organization allowed it to shift operations between countries in response to law enforcement pressure, maintaining continuity while sacrificing local assets when necessary. This adaptability demonstrated strategic thinking that anticipated and planned for various contingencies. The institutional corruption uncovered during the investigation led to reforms in federal oversight procedures, but critics argue that these changes address symptoms rather than underlying vulnerabilities. The network's success in compromising multiple agencies simultaneously revealed systemic weaknesses that may be inherent in large, bureaucratic organizations. The reforms implemented focus on procedural improvements rather than the fundamental cultural changes that might prevent future infiltration. Academic researchers studying the case have proposed theories about the network's ultimate purpose that extend beyond simple commercial motivation. Some suggest that the organization served as a testing ground for social control techniques, using criminal enterprise as cover for experiments in human behavior modification and institutional manipulation. These theories remain speculative, but the sophistication of the network's operations supports hypotheses about purposes that transcended mere profit generation. The psychological impact on investigators who worked the case has been profound and lasting. Many experienced federal agents requested transfers to other assignments, citing the disturbing nature of the evidence and the frustration of pursuing an organization that seemed to anticipate their every move. The case challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of evil and the effectiveness of law enforcement institutions in confronting sophisticated criminal enterprises. Recent developments suggest that the network may have evolved rather than disappeared, adapting its methods to exploit new technologies and social vulnerabilities. Reports of similar activities in other regions employ techniques that reflect lessons learned from the Arizona investigation, indicating organizational learning and adaptation. The network appears to have successfully incorporated countermeasures designed to prevent future detection and prosecution. The families of identified victims continue to seek answers that may never come, as the full scope of the network's activities remains unknown. Memorial services have been held for individuals whose remains were recovered, but many families face the uncertainty of never knowing their loved ones' fate. The human cost of the network's activities extends far beyond the documented victims to encompass the ongoing suffering of those left behind. The case files remain classified, their contents known only to a select group of investigators and officials who carry the burden of knowledge that cannot be shared. The truth about the network's full scope and continuing activities lies buried in bureaucratic archives, protected by classifications that may never be lifted. The Phantom Trucker's legacy endures not in capture or justice, but in the questions that remain forever unanswered along America's endless highways. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Sinister Memory. If you enjoyed today's investigation, subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell to be alerted when we unveil our next dark chronicle. Share your thoughts about this case in the comments below. We read every single one, and your ideas often lead us to our next investigation. Until next time.